Hey everybody, I'm Jay Scherr with Jay Scherr Business Consulting. We help entrepreneurs, business owners, and other leaders maximize their potential, build rock-solid foundations for their businesses, and create more freedom in their lives. And you've joined Business Minds Coffee Chat. Alice Walker said, "The most common way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any." Well, on today's episode, we're going to explore the topic of confidence and owning your power, the common obstacles standing in the way of building authentic confidence, how we can enhance our presence and self-confidence, inspiring confidence in those around you, and more. My guest is a wife and mother of twins, a Wall Street Journal best-selling author, leadership consultant, TEDx-er, and internationally renowned speaker. She earned her Bachelor of Science and Master of Social Work degrees from New York University and has an MBA from Johns Hopkins. She's a LinkedIn top voice and was named by Forbes as the premier expert on standing up for yourself at work. She trains some of the brightest minds on leadership development at places like the World Bank, Microsoft, Under Armour, Pfizer, and Nestle. She's been featured by notable media outlets, including the Wall Street Journal, Oprah.com, the LA Times, and Marie Claire. Please welcome the woman who's teaching us how to build authentic confidence, stop overthinking, and own our authority, Selena Rezvani. Selena, it is so great to see you. Thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Jay. And I'm a big fan of your show. Enjoyed so much just listening to an episode this morning, actually, about Dr. Ruth Gotian. Dr. Ruth is one of my good friends, and you both did a phenomenal job.
Thank you so much. She is a fantastic leader and such an incredible thinker, as are you, which is one of the things that I'm so excited about our conversation today. And I'll share with you that this particular topic that you're an expert in is one that just speaks to my heart on so many different levels. And we'll talk a bit more about that, but I'm really excited. So let's dive right in. I thought a good starting point for us would be for you to share with all of us what your favorite thing is about yourself and why.
Wow, what a great question that nobody's ever asked me. I think it's this. I think it's being coachable. I used to take feedback or criticism as this almost painful wound, like this proof that I wasn't doing it right, that I may never get it right. And it wasn't until I kind of changed some of my inner dialogue from that harsh inner critic to more of a coach, more of a Ted Lasso type coach, bringing that friendly, more supportive energy, that I started to realize, wait, this can help me. This can help me sharpen my edge. And this is a big part of growth that, maybe I haven't figured it out yet, and I think I started to learn that I could frame problems and obstacles differently, from I'll never get this, I stink at this, to, asking for feedback gives me angles I didn't think of. Asking for help helps me grow, a lot more quickly than just trying to do it on my own. So I think it's that hard-won skill of being a coachable human.
I love that. That is so good. So with that said, at what point in your life did you have the self-awareness to know that the way that you were handling feedback was not working for you and that you needed to do something different? And how did you ultimately discover for yourself that there were some better tools and strategies, let's say, that you could use to show up differently, become that type of coachable human being, and be able to grow from within?
Yeah, I can think of lots of examples, unfortunately, and maybe fortunately, for sharing. But, I remember when I had my very first book idea, and I happened to be in business school getting my MBA at night in an executive type program. And I shared it with my class, and a guy in my class said, Selena, what makes you think you could ever write a book?
Mm.
And that kind of parodied all my worst, or parroted all of my own worst fears, about myself, my own kind of imposter thoughts and doubts. So I think there have been times for me where I have to decide, who is the source of the feedback? Is this feedback I want to take in and use? And I think in that case, it just stands out in my mind as a moment I kind of had to overcome that feedback and not take it too seriously, be a little bit Teflon coated with that. I didn't particularly respect this source, and it was time to move on from it, right? On the other hand, I can think of a boss I had who said, when I said I'd really like a promotion, well, Selena, you need to show up more like a leader. I didn't really know what that meant, but I felt very kind of damned by it. I saw it like a big red stop sign in front of me, and I allowed it to kind of quiet me and shut me down from some of my aspirations and wants to advance my career. And it wasn't until that boss, she happened to be on the West Coast, I was on the East Coast, came back for a trip to our East Coast, that over dinner I said, hey, can I ask you more about that? What do you mean? I'd love to understand better what you mean. How does someone show up who's more leader-like? And she went on to tell me, and it was like, boom, light bulb moment. Okay, you're telling me to be more communicative about my ideas in meetings. Okay, that I can do, or get out there and mentor more of the junior folks proactively, sharing what I know and, trying to save them time, sharing my best tips. Okay, that I can do, so I think we have to all realize feedback so rarely comes gift wrapped, perfectly ready for us to use. If you don't understand it, probe, ask more questions, don't fear it.
That is so true. And I think often, I don't know if this is your experience as well, but from what I've seen, often if the feedback is coming from the right person, delivered the right way, it can have such a substantial impact on us versus hearing from somebody like you mentioned as an example, this person in your class that said, made the comment that they made, right? Perhaps you didn't have a level of respect necessarily for that person, but for somebody else who's in a position that you do respect, or someone that's in a position of authority that you strive to be like, that type of feedback may come across very differently. It may land differently with you. Is that a fair statement to make?
Absolutely. And I think you can feel it when somebody's got that constructive approach. They want to see you do better. I think my warning to folks would be, though, just because it makes sense to them, the way they're delivering it, doesn't mean it makes sense to you or that you can take action on it. So again, peel the onion back. That's your job as the one trying to grow and learn. Peel the onion back with your questions. What would need to be true in order for me, to have what it takes to be a manager here? What would need to be true? Or what are some of the behaviors associated, with the senior consultants that you promote around here, right? Get granular. No reason you should just know that through osmosis.
Yeah, great questions. It kind of reminds me of the Socratic method. Just like you said, keep peeling back the layers so you have better clarity on that, because otherwise you walk away with, scratching your head. Okay, what did I just take away from this, right? I have no actionable items that can actually help me move in the direction or grow in the direction that I want to go.
Exactly.
So that's excellent. So, as you were talking about your own personal story here when it comes to feedback and that self-awareness piece, it made me think about beliefs and that self-talk that we have. Could you share with us something that you believed about yourself early in life that you discovered later wasn't true?
Yes. I call myself often a recovering good girl
Oh,
because, in the particular household I was raised in, you speak when spoken to for the most part. Take just enough. Don't be too outspoken. Well, those things, may work potentially in some households, but boy, that didn't serve me when I got to the workplace. Here I was in one of my first roles at a management consulting firm trying to advise leaders on how to improve their workplaces. And I often would relegate myself to that outer rung of chairs in the boardroom, or I would tell myself, you're not that expert. You're not that experienced. Maybe let somebody else speak up. And guess what? It didn't work out great for anyone. I wasn't giving them anything memorable or really to work with. And I didn't have the satisfaction myself of, wagering a guess or, hazarding a really cool idea, proposal, whatever it is. So I think sometimes messages we start out with early that maybe somebody even intended, in a positive way, to teach us, to share, or to think of the communal, not just ourselves, can sometimes hold us back. And of course, there's a balance there. We don't want to talk over people or interrupt them or silence the room. But it's important to be able to make bold bets on yourself, right? And nobody on earth can amplify or get behind your best ideas if you don't share them.
Yeah, that is so true. And those stories that we tell ourselves, those messages that we learn early in life that we continue to play on a loop have such an impact on how we show up to the world today. And just to add a bit more context on my personal story, which there might be some common threads to some things that you heard in your household. I had very low self-confidence, low self-esteem. I was compared to other people. Why can't you be more like this person? Why can't you be as smart as this person, get better grades like so-and-so, and all of those things. And similar to what you said, I would stay in the back of a room. I would never hold my hand up. I didn't have the confidence level to want to be called on. I may have known the answer to the question, but
Right.
I was not going to put myself in the spotlight. And it took, quite frankly, it took years of deep work. And I still work on myself, but it's taken years to reframe those stories, to change that narrative that I kept hearing over and over again. And it's so interesting because it happens on a subconscious level, and we don't even realize why we're doing certain things or making certain decisions until that self-awareness piece, or therapy in some cases could certainly help out as well. So that's really interesting. I appreciate you sharing your own perspective on that. So tell me something, if we stay back in time a bit, in the household that you were raised in, in doing my due diligence, I understand that your father had heart disease and ultimately passed away. Now, how old were you when he passed away?
Almost 14.
Almost 14. So, what was from what you recall, what was one of the most valuable lessons that you learned from your father?
Wow. My dad immigrated to the US from Pakistan, and he did that in the 60s and made a pretty beautiful life for himself here, without any template, without connections. And I admire that a great deal. Just the pioneering nature, the confidence, the faith to be able to do something like that. I'm not sure I could ever do that. So I will always salute my dad for doing what he did. But, when I think about my dad and his ambitions, he always had eyes bigger than his stomach. And I love that in a person, meaning, you're more ambitious than you can even believe, than practicality says you should be. And that's something I take from him. I think the ability to say, you know what? I want to write a book. I feel I have something that could be of service, that could add value to people. I don't know how. I don't know the way. I don't know the channels and the path, but I am going to do it. And I think I get that from my dad. He really patterned that, and I will always appreciate it so much.
That's so good. And I have a similar immigrant type story, but it's with my grandfather and not with my father. But that level of grit, resilience, fortitude, going into the unknown. I don't know about your father, but my grandfather came to this country, didn't speak a word of English. Wow. And so I understand where you're coming from. That's an amazing role model to have. Now, same question about your mother. What was one of the most valuable lessons that you've learned from your mother that you still carry with you today?
Oh my goodness. My mom is Ukrainian, and she refers to herself as a tough Ukrainian. And she really is. She is the toughest person I have ever known. Grew up on a farm. Just my mom's strength astonishes me, both through losing my dad, through stepping up and serving as two parents in one. Just constantly doing the impossible, and digging deeper to find that strength, that toughness. I mean, forever I will look at her and say, if she can be that strong, surely I can get myself through this moment.
Yeah, I feel you on that one. That's amazing. So what did it take for you to be able to write your first book? So you kind of talked about some of that negative self-talk that we have, and who are you to bring this idea to the world, or who are you to write this book? What was the experience like? Because your current book, Quick Confidence, is not your first book. So right. Writing your first book, what was that experience like for you, and what did you have to overcome to be able to bring that book to life?
Yeah, when I think about that first book I wrote, it's called The Next Generation of Women Leaders. I think of like a kid being on a roller coaster the first time that season, on a beautiful summer day, big, huge grin on their face. That's what that book was like. And I think it's because a book has been a dream of mine for a long time, as a way to reach people, as a person who loves to write and, express ideas and techniques and things that people can use in the written form. So being able to pull that off with the first book was just awesome. Like that fabulous happy, joyful feeling. The way that book came about was I had mentioned I was in business school. And in this business program, one of the reasons I chose it was because we could direct one piece of our own research. And I really liked that it wasn't all cookie cutter business classes. And we had to get that approved. And I remember I had one female professor at Johns Hopkins in my 2 years. And I said to her, I know what I want to do. I want to interview women leaders at the top of their game. And I want to understand, how did they negotiate their career success? How would they help somebody coming up maybe accelerate their path? And she said to me, my professor, Lindsay Thompson, she said, I'll approve your proposal on one condition. Selena, you have to go after the giants. You have to go after the women leaders you think won't even read your email. Like, if you do that, yes, you can do it. And I did, thanks to her. I would not have aimed that high, truthfully, on my own. And I reached out to these women one by one, and so many of them said yes. And these interviews I did with them changed my life. I'm talking about the CEO of the Washington Post, the CEO of the LA Dodgers at the time, CEO of Bigelow Teas, of the greeting card, Papyrus, just so many incredible leaders. And those interviews changed my life. And I thought, I'm not that unique. I think there's other people that could learn from this and grow from this. And so that's when I pitched it to a publisher. They said yes. And that led to a second book, a business, a third book, and a life's mission, really, to help people, confidently make their presence felt, to carve their path to leadership.
That's such a great story and such an inspiring one. And for all of you that are watching and listening right now, I can imagine, because the question that I have is, I'm assuming you had no contacts, right? None. Particular connections to these people. So the ability to say, all right, I'm just going to figure this out, right? I've been tasked with something that might seem difficult, and it could have stopped many people in their tracks, but you made a conscious decision that you were going to figure this out. This was something that was important to you. There was purpose behind it and mission, and you did it. Nothing can stop a made-up mind. So, right? So,
That's right.
once you get after it. So, as you were doing this, what were you learning about yourself as you're going through the process of doing the research, connecting with these women leaders, and starting to do the research to write the book? As you're doing this, you're growing yourself. So what are you learning about you?
Oh my goodness, so many light bulb moments, but I remember one especially clearly. I had interviewed the chair of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. And what a wonderful, generous interview that was. And in it, some of the themes we talked about were good work is not enough. You have to be able to be the world's leading expert on your value, the value you're creating. And, at times remind folks of that, for example, a boss. And I just remember some of the additional kind of pointers I got doing that and constructing a raise request myself, because I was working full time at the time, and getting it, Jay. And that just was shocking to me, this ability to, wow, okay, the world doesn't work that way, that you can just kind of keep your head down, do the work, and somebody will notice, then you'll get the A+ on your paper. It doesn't work like school, where you do the studying and that's enough. You have to talk about it. You have to sometimes promote accomplishments. You certainly have to keep a log of them and inventory what you're doing well. And so that was just such an instructive, powerful moment to hear It's not enough to just do the good work.
Well, that is definitely one of those aha moments. And I think it speaks again to what many of us have been taught culturally, that if you just work hard, you'll do fine, right? Just keep doing the work, and at some point you're going to reach this line in the sand that says you've made it.
Right.
And it just, I look, I mean, there are plenty of people in generations past that have stayed with companies for many, many, many years and then retire with the gold watch and whatnot. And I just, it's interesting that we're at a place today where that really is a myth, where, to your point, there, just doing the good work isn't enough. And
Right.
were you going to add to that?
I was going to add to it to say,
Sure.
I think there's a lot of safety for us today in not relying solely on our one job. And I think the beauty of getting better at knowing your value, knowing what you offer, maybe what your distinct point of view is, and how it can help people, it makes you better able to maybe come up with that side hustle, to maybe revert from corporate worker one day to entrepreneur, if that you so choose, right? So I think that the thing about self-promotion and really looking at the patterns in your value is it's not just outer for others, it's also for you. It's giving you more bargaining chips in your career, more choices. And isn't that what we all want, is choice?
Absolutely, because choice leads to freedom, right? When we have choices to do what we want to do, then we have options that are always available, and we can create freedom in our lives in all the different life buckets, if you will.
Yes.
So knowing your value, I'm glad you said that, because this is one that I see as a big item, a big issue amongst so many of us, men and women. So how does one go about finding what their value is? So if they have no idea, what's a good starting point to begin to understand what value they bring to the market?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. And let's give people who are listening some actionable advice to make their own kind of plan. I think one of the first reflection questions, which usually feels good to people, is where do I tend to get the most praise and compliments? What are those situations? Maybe it's in performance reviews. Maybe it's from clients themselves you've worked with. Where are you tending to get praise? Maybe you start to notice a pattern looking at that feedback that, wow, it's always around relationship management. I'm getting praise internally that I manage our most important client accounts really well in this trust building long-term way. And maybe that's something you also enjoy. I think that's an important follow-up to that praise and recognition is, do I like this? Yes, it's probably easy or natural for you, but is this something you enjoy? And I think even better, if you can add to that, is there a demand for that as well, right? Because that's going to give you more of that sustainability in your career. Is there an actual need? Or maybe, is there a way I could bend this a bit to meet a demand today, that's not being met? So I think looking at your praise, your wins and accomplishments, I think another one is looking at hard results generated. So what have I done? Have I maybe brought repeat business back, time and again with clients? Or have I gotten accolades for my writing of reports or that type of thing? Is it projects that I finished on time or under budget? What are the patterns there? that I see in terms of my results, right? It's often hard to refute facts. So the
Sure.
nice thing about this section is it's not a lot of innuendo or guessing. You know, you did those things. You onboarded 10 new employees, or you trained and mentored, 7 junior associates in this time frame. Know that stuff, because I promise if you try to commit it to memory, you're going to miss something important. And I don't know about you, Jay, but I definitely have those rough days where everything seems messed up in my life. And, I'd encourage people to keep a kind of a smile file on this same, vein, of things that feel good. Maybe that nice note from a happy customer, or a lovely interaction you had with a podcast host, that make you feel good. A wonderful note from a family member that means a lot on a Post-it. Makes you feel good. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, these are great questions that we can ask ourselves. The one other thing that I was thinking of, and I'm just curious what your perspective is on this, I think about and recommend to others to have a personal board of directors of people that know you, that aren't just going to tell you what you want to hear, but people that you trust, that have your best interest, and who can provide you good, meaningful feedback on things that they see about you. So as an example, as you were going through this list of questions we can ask, what are some things that I do well, right? Things like that. So others often are able to see things about us that we don't see ourselves, right? So they may say that, hey, Selena, you are exceptionally good at asking questions or listening or really exploring someone's interests. So I think if we surround ourselves with people who we can have these kinds of conversations with, it can also help bring some light to our own value. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I really like the board of directors and the idea that can evolve and change as we do, because what we need today might not look the same as it did 3 years ago, or how we were during the pandemic. And I think that's a wonderful thing. It takes some gardening and sunshine and love and soil that you put on that, wonderful board of directors, set of relationships. It doesn't just grow by itself. You have to take care of those and, sometimes shift the members, depending on what's going on. And I think as long as people know that, start from a position of generosity and giving, maybe before you're asking, or start from a place where there's maybe just an organic, really wonderful connection that is clear to see. I think that can be really positive. And I think we get better at building our board of directors when we know ourselves well, when we have that good self-awareness to say, like, what season am I in right now? What am I needing more of right now? Am I needing somebody more experienced in X, Y, or Z? Am I looking for somebody who very much has been on this road I'm walking right now? So it's kind of a twofer. I think it forces you to ask yourself, where am I? And what do I most need? But also, what can I best give to that person or that community?
Yeah, very powerful and insightful points. Thank you for sharing that. So you mentioned about the pandemic. So this gives us a great segue, because the pandemic played a role in the foundation of your latest book, Quick Confidence. Mm-hmm. So share with us briefly how Quick Confidence came about, because it's a very interesting story.
Yes. Well, I was having this wonderful breakout year, Jay, at the beginning of 2020. I had just negotiated over months and months, in some cases, deals, partnerships, speaking engagements. And I just was flying high, feeling wonderful. And like a lot of people, reality bit really hard in March of that year. And by and large, I lost those contracts that I had worked so hard to negotiate. And many clients saying, we just don't know about the future. We just can't make any promises. And boy, did my confidence take a hit as a business owner, as somebody who was looking just like the rest of the world to somehow pivot and adapt. And in some cases, clients looking to me, Selena, how should we adapt? How should we change? And as I looked around, I noticed a lot of other people losing self-confidence. Of course, right? They're worried about job insecurity. They're worried about loved ones and basic health, right? Safety, that's so critically important. And I thought, what if I could offer just like a little fortifier, like a little vitamin each week of confidence, a boost of that, not just for them, but for me too. And so I got out my PC and opened Start on a LinkedIn newsletter. And I decided to call it Quick Confidence, to be all about those little bite-sized ways we can boost our confidence in an everyday way, not just the once a year, like big deal moments. And it, to my shock, went viral pretty early and turned from a kind of letter I wrote each week with tips to a forum, where people were sharing with me, oh, and here's what I do in that networking situation when I'm nervous, or here's what's really helped me that I want to add to your list. It was awesome. It's still awesome. And lo and behold, that became a book with 88 of the best tips from the newsletter, and has been just a joy to help people on 3 different levels: with mindset around working on your confidence, interpersonal moments, when you're trying to maximize those connections with others. And then the third one, your body language. What about those moves, the physicality, those kind of things that you can do to boost confidence? So it's really changed my life. I'm very confident it can help so many other people who don't have a lifetime to learn this. They want to have more of that self-assurance tomorrow, today. And I understand that.
I love it. And the book is so good because it is actionable, right? So it does provide great strategies. It's applicable right now, in the moment. There's things that you can do right now that are going to help you grow that level of confidence. And so share with us what some of the characteristics are of confident people.
Yeah, I'll tell you one that has always impressed me. And yet, Jay, I don't know about you, I couldn't quite put my finger on what they were doing.
Okay.
And it's a simple thing, especially if you do it as a rule. And I call it the dog principle. And I have a big dog, 140-pound dog. If you were to come over to my house, what would my dog do as I open the door and greet you? What do you think?
Well, I'm thinking tail's going to wag and somebody's going to come up to check you out and find out what you're all about. Do you love dogs?
Exactly. Yes, you got it. And they're going to come right up to you, right? What they're not going to do is overthink it in the corner, ask their best friend, oh, there's Jay. Should I approach him or shouldn't I, right? They're just going to come right up to you. And there's something to be said for that. There's something that we can learn from confident people, which is they tend to be very comfortable initiating contact. So I like to encourage people, be the first to break the seal, to say hello to the newcomer who's just joined your department. Be the first to go up to that person you sort of kind of know at the party and say, "Hi, I remember you. It's nice to see you." Be the first to ask that person to lunch, who could use like an ally or a friend. It's amazing what that does when you habituate that habit. You sidestep the overthinking, that can, for lack of a better word, dog so many of us, right? Where we get stuck in that overthinking and we don't do. People will remember you for initiating, they'll appreciate you, and they'll interpret it as warmth.
That's such a great strategy. And I'll share with you, I don't know if you have this feeling, but when I do initiate contact like that, it's like a weight has been lifted when the person responds.
Yeah.
And it's like all of a sudden, it, like to your point, it kind of breaks the seal. You can start having a conversation, but it just feels so much better because prior to there's angst and you're thinking, gosh, should I say something to that person or not?
That's
so
exactly
I love that
right.
one.
And I think for so many of us, especially after the pandemic, we've been feeling socially rusty, and that's normal. That's okay. Sometimes people will ask me, yeah, but what about after I get there? So I've initiated it. Like, I'm not exactly sure what to do now. And I say, like, you don't need to put pressure on that part. It might fizzle and be an effervescent conversation. It might not. That's okay. You don't need to predict the future or try to control that. It's really about starting and coming from a place of openness, warmth, authenticity. The rest, let it be what it is.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I find that the more we do this, the more that we step out and that we take that initiative, it's like building better habits, right? We become more comfortable with it the more we do. So, yeah. So what are then some of, and you list a number of these in the book, but what are some of the common, let's just call them roadblocks that really keep us from building authentic confidence? So let's maybe pick a couple of them. Let's not go through all of them, but a couple, and then maybe an example to go along with them.
Yeah. So I think one I notice that's a roadblock is breaking promises to yourself. If you think about it, it feels good when we keep a promise. You lend me $5 and I pay you back. Here you go, Jay. Thank you for that. Here's your money back. We get a little ego cookie. We feel good. We get an esteem boost when we make good on our word. And I think it's just as important we do that with ourselves. And I think there's a little part of each of us that's kind of watching and waiting when we make a promise to ourselves if we're going to do it. So if you say, I'm going to apply for that exciting job tomorrow, or I'm going to go for the scholarship opportunity, or I'm going to ask so-and-so who has my dream job to coffee, and you don't do it, right? You suffer a little bit each time. And I think it's really important not to create an additional roadblock for yourself around confidence and esteem by breaking those commitments you make to yourself. Really, the beauty is when you keep them, the opposite happens. You see yourself not like a flaky coworker who you can't rely on, but
right.
This rock of dependability, and someone who keeps their word. That's an awesome feeling. So
it truly is. So before you move to another one, what would you say to someone who does break their promises? So if I say, as an example, I'll come up with something simple, right? Tomorrow, I'm going to not stop at the donut store in the morning, and instead I'm going to go to the gym and walk for 10 minutes. Tomorrow comes, I go to the donut store, I don't go to the gym, and I'm beating myself up. So what would you suggest, or what would you say to somebody who's not good at holding their following through on the promises that they make? What should they do next? What's a small step they can take to begin to create better habits and behaviors?
Yeah, that's very relatable, I think, to all of us, having those moments of like, oops, that's not at all what I said I would do. Like, what happened? And I think one of the most important things, so many people get stuck here: fresh slate. Tomorrow is a fresh slate. We are not beating ourselves up. We are not replaying tapes from what I did yesterday, the day before, and the day before that. It is a fresh, judgment-free slate. So I think that's really important. You quote unquote screwed up. Tomorrow is a new day, or today in some cases is a new day. So allow yourself that to start fresh. I think a second thing is it's okay to shrink the promises you make to yourself. So maybe make fewer promises if this is a rampant kind of problem. Or shrink the size. You made a great point in your example of saying 10 minutes walking. Maybe it's 5. The idea is you want to get wins up on the board of consistency. And so it's okay to start so small, but know that you can honor it. It's going to help you honor it, right? To keep it small. So give yourself the opportunity to win at this and to build this habit. That's not usually going to happen for most of us by making the goal really overambitious at first.
Yeah, this is so good. So give us one more roadblock or obstacle and an example that goes along with that.
Yeah, there is this old saying in comedy that the only safe joke to make is a self-deprecating joke. It's like the only joke that's not going to offend somebody is the one that's at your own expense. That may be true and all, and maybe we appreciate a good self-deprecating joke, but there's ways in which we can be too self-deprecating, and I think it is an obstacle. And one simple thing I talk about is learning how to take a compliment, right? It's, when somebody's giving you a compliment, they're kind of like throwing you a ball. And when you say to them something like, it was nothing, anyone would have stepped up and done the same. Or, something that diminishes what they're saying, it's kind of like them throwing the ball and you just letting it fall on the ground, until it stops bouncing. Like, it's awkward. It actually makes the situation kind of awkward and weird. And guess what? It doesn't feel particularly good to you. You're not receiving this gift they just gave you, right? So a roadblock, I think, is deflecting those compliments, diminishing them, saying, no, it was nothing. It usually wasn't nothing. So instead, I would recommend accepting it like you're, catching a ball. Turn towards the compliment. Because you might see people sometimes literally wave away like, no, it was fine. No, square up with that person. They are giving you something. Hear it. You might say something like, that means a lot, Jay. Like, I'm really thrilled with how the project turned out too. So one idea is acknowledge it and build on it. Something genuine from your heart. Or just that means so much coming from a mentor like you. Thank you for sharing.
I love that. This particular one pains me because for years and years, I would deflect if a compliment came my way. I did not like them. It made me, I don't know why I felt weird. I can't think of another word, but it just didn't feel right to me. And I would just say, no big deal, or don't worry about it. And, listening to you and listening to others, it finally made sense that it benefits the other person who's actually providing the compliment to accept it, as you said, because it is a gift. It's a gift, and appreciate. and be grateful for it, as opposed to letting it drop or just say, discounting it. So that's a good one. Thank you for sharing that. So if we could, just very briefly, could you speak about the importance of body language when it comes to confidence?
Yeah, this is a big one. And if you kind of take some time to notice when you're nervous, let's say you're nervous because you're in a job interview, or you're nervous because you're going to a networking event with some like industry bigwigs, or you're giving that presentation in a fancy boardroom or something. What many of us do is we tend to shrink in those situations. And that might look like kind of folding up our bodies, like arms are very close to the rib cage. We're not gesturing often. We're kind of staying very small. It might sound like low talking because we don't want to be too noticeable and stand out. It also might look like, kind of furtive eye contact. I don't want to make clear, bold eye contact with anyone because maybe I'm questioning my own place at this function, at this event. Well, guess what? That not only sends not great signals to others that you're engaged and that you've earned your place at this event, but it also feels bad for you. It's kind of telling your brain to keep quiet, don't, fly under the radar type of thing. And so I want to encourage people who have a moment like that to use their body language to do the opposite. Instead of constrict, expand. That means standing tall, like almost like walking, like you want your head to brush the ceiling. It's a different way of standing than just kind of hanging out. You can adopt, if you're at a standing networking event, for example, what I call surfer pose, which is standing with your feet just a little more than shoulder width apart. Not sumo pose where you're like really taking over the room, but you're expanding, you're kind of claiming your full bubble of space, and you're open, to others. You're turning to others to include them in conversations and invite them in. These are simple things that we can do to reassure ourselves in a situation that I 400% belong in this interview, in this boardroom. And we can be more convincing when we are able to speak fluidly and move fluidly, like, for example, to gesture, because we're not tight and shrunken, we're more loose and more open. So even though it can be counterintuitive when you're afraid, it's such a great time to fatten up what I say, your body language, your posture.
That is so good, and thank you for sharing those insights. I know that's going to land well with everyone that's watching and listening right now. And my friends, we have been talking about confidence. We've been talking about the book Quick Confidence. And Selena, as we are wrapping up our conversation, I could speak with you for another hour. I love this conversation. But So two quick things for you. One is a question, and then one is an ask. And here's my question to you. What is one of the greatest gifts that life has given you that you didn't realize at the time? Just one.
I think the intense struggles for me to conceive my twins was one of the most heartbreaking, difficult, depressing times in my life. Just this inability to start a family, something I dreamed of doing, and wasn't happening. It's supposed to be like the most natural thing on earth and just wasn't happening, and really suffering at the hands of that. Feeling one of my lowest lows, and the gift of having twins at the end of that process, a boy and a girl. It's like it brings me to tears. The gift it keeps on being, the lottery winning, it felt like at the end of that really difficult road. So that's the
Wow.
first thing that comes to my mind when I think about that amazing
Woo.
gift.
That brings tears to my eyes. I can feel that one. I get it. And then here is my ask. I would love it if you would give all of us, including me, a challenge. What is one thing that you would challenge all of us to do starting today?
I would challenge you to be somebody else's Lindsay. I told you at the beginning about my professor, Lindsay Thompson, who challenged me to think bigger. So, how can you give a vote of confidence to somebody else? You might listen to their dream and say, that's a nice dream. Now, what would happen if you thought bigger?
Great question to ask ourselves, and a great challenge. I want to thank you for that. And Selena, thank you so very much for joining us today on Business Minds Coffee Chat. I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Thank you for just being candid and transparent, showing your confidence and your wisdom and sharing that with all of us. So I'm grateful for you. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Jay. And here's a compliment I'm going to give you that is so genuine and from the heart. You create a space here. You create conditions here that make people want to share, that make people feel safe enough to share the real stuff. So thank you. I've been on 8 dozen of these, and you are awesome. You
Thank
rock.
you for that. I appreciate it. I am accepting that one from you, and I truly do appreciate it. Thank you. And for all of you that are watching and listening right now, thank you so very much for tuning in as well. And I do have a super quick favor. Would you take just a moment to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts? That helps us expand our reach and attract amazing guests just like Selena. And to enjoy more episodes, all you need to do is visit jscherbusinessconsulting.com. Click that podcast button. And until next time, keep learning and growing. Make sure you matter of fact, run to pick up a copy of Quick Confidence and apply the lessons you learn. And we'll see you on the next Business Minds Coffee Chat. Take care, everybody.